got a special guest today. This time it's Certifiably Ingame.
Hello, I'm Rick from Certifiably Ingame.
Hello,
It's good to be
Rick.
here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you on, man.
That's all right.
I've been following you for a little while, mostly the Doctor Who stuff, I will admit, because
Yeah, I do a mix.
I'm not a massive. You do Star Trek as well, don't you?
Yeah, a lot of Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, I will admit. I've watched bits, but maybe I should watch more. Maybe I should. If I like Doctor Who, maybe I should watch more Star Trek. But
Yeah, there's a lot there as well. There's about as much Trek as there is Doctor Who. They're both like 50-year-old franchises at this point.
yeah. So as always, we like to start by just having the guest tell me a bit about their channel. You know, how you got
Mhm.
started, like what you do on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, all right. So, Certifiably In-Game, name is a pun for Certifiably Insane, which no one ever really gets, but hey, whatever. Originally started as a gaming channel, but dove straight into the lore stuff around Star Trek. And then from there, I decided to evolve it into a sci fi lore channel. And that's when I brought on my love of Doctor Who and things like that as well. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Who and Star Trek are like the two big ones. But I'll cover anything as long as I know it or can research it quickly enough, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So it was originally a gaming channel, but you sort of moved into sci-fi, science fiction lore.
Yeah, YouTube's got a ton of gaming stuff, so I decided to do something different.
Mm.
So the name stuck, but the focus shifted.
It certainly is different because there are a lot of channels that do videos discussing lore of certain things. I've never
Yep.
seen a channel that does it so in depth in that way. I
Thanks.
I think especially with the recent examples where you examine the Master and the Doctor's timelines respectively. I found
Yeah,
that fascinating, even though I've been following the show for over a decade, which I know is not long compared to some other
yeah,
fans, but that's still quite a while. And then to just be sort of amazed by some of the stuff that you don't even pick up despite following the show so religiously in that way.
yeah. I do the same thing for Trek as I do Doctor Who as well, where I go to other sources, not just the show. Like there's books out there, lore books and everything, compendiums, audio stories, which I'm sure a lot of Whovians have looked at.
Mm.
But there's a whole myriad of like other stories out there that I often fold into the main like story,
Mm.
usually with like a disclaimer pointing out that this is from a comic or this is from something else, so it might not be canon. But in
Yeah.
Doctor Who in particular, canon doesn't really mean as much as it does with other franchises.
Yeah.
It's all timey-wimey and all over the place anyway.
Yeah, I think it's because on the spot change was built into the show from its inception.
Yeah,
So which is
yeah, it is.
hence why canon is so flimsy in a way with it. So
Fluid.
yeah, fluid is probably a better way
Yeah,
of putting it.
timey-wimey fluid.
Timey wimey fluid, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, and obviously, as I said before, the first video I watched of yours was how regeneration works, which I found thoroughly interesting because obviously
Yeah,
we never really get an explanation for a lot of
no.
the things that happen per regeneration. So it was
I
interesting.
I'd say that's both a strength and a weakness of the series. It's a weakness because for like lore nuts like me, I like to get into it and know how it works. But it's also a strength because it maintains, not knowing how it works, maintains the whole mysticism of the Time Lords. We're not supposed to understand them completely because they're so far above everything else.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, a lot of fans always say, why does the Doctor regenerate inside the TARDIS? It seems more like a health hazard than anything else.
Yeah,
But then, obviously,
yeah.
you hear about it being aiding in the process and things like
Yeah,
that.
somehow like there's even in New Who and Classic Who, because there's a bit of divide in sort of the lore caused by mostly the storytelling, how that's changed over the time. But they've repeatedly done things like a fresh regeneration of the Doctor, like we need to get him back to the TARDIS. Um, it's always been a part of like the Doctor's regeneration that he needs to be near the TARDIS or in the TARDIS for presumably for like health or safety reasons and things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and New Who's done a pretty good things to add to that as well. Like I think it was Capaldi's Doctor that mentions about how they like to regenerate among their own kind because somebody might mistake a Time Lord for being dead and then bury them or something, and then they'd regenerate and be buried alive, which would be terrifying.
Yeah.
So they've taken like new angles and new approaches to some of the older stuff as well, which is pretty fun to see.
Yeah, and obviously regeneration in itself, the origins of regeneration has some sort of wonky canon with obviously the looms and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And
God knows if they're still canon, or if even to be fair, if they ever were, but who knows?
yeah, it's I mean I like to think that they are because
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like the idea of it.
yeah, yeah. Like I did a video a while ago that was basically the idea was that anything in Who is canon at one time or another in theory, because you could just say time changed and it got rewritten and it doesn't exist anymore, but it did at some point.
Yeah.
So there's no reason the looms couldn't have been a part of it at
Yeah.
some stage.
I mean, I think I like the idea that the 12 regeneration limit was imposed by Rassilon because he didn't want to give anyone true immortality,
Yeah,
except
and
himself. I like that idea because it shows the arrogance of Rassilon that no one could be better than he was in that
yeah,
way.
yeah. I mean, originally Rassilon, when he was first unveiled, didn't appear to be so megalomaniacal. That's arguably something that's been retroactively added in. But it fits with how we see him when he was played by Timothy Dalton and so on in current era Who. He's a maniac.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the idea that he limited it so that no one would
Yeah,
be truly more powerful than he was.
I mean, it doesn't seem to be an issue, does it? When the Doctor falls on Trenzalore, that was meant to be his final death. That was meant to be the end of his final form, the Matt Smith regeneration.
Yeah.
But the Time Lords just break it and just go, all right, here's another whole set of regenerations.
I mean, I always thought that the Meta Crisis being a full incarnation was a little bit of a
Yeah,
wonky one. I understand why it was done because obviously
yeah.
Moffat wanted to tackle the "This is the Last Doctor" storyline, but I don't know. I just feel like
I mean,
because
that was always, it was, I remember when it first happened, people were, saying, look, well, does this count as a regeneration? Because it used the regeneration. It didn't abort or anything like that. It was a completed regeneration. It just went somewhere different and he didn't count or not. And obviously they've written it in that, yes, it did count. But
yeah,
yeah, that was,
it makes sense. I always saw it as before it got canonized as being a full incarnation. I always saw it as the energy went into the hand and
yeah.
thus causing cancelling out the process. But I mean,
Yeah. It's like,
I can understand both sides to that argument.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole thing about Matt Smith being the last regeneration, that wasn't fully confirmed to be a thing until I think the time of the Doctor, that sort of, that sort of big story arc, the end of time sort of
Yeah,
era, where they started bringing in the whole reason they brought in the War Doctor, played by John Hurt, was because I think Christopher Eccleston couldn't return
yeah,
to reprise the ninth role because they wanted originally 9, 10, and 11 all in the same thing, but they couldn't get that. So they had to retroactively insert the War Doctor, which
yeah,
then bumped Matt Smith forward a rung, technically.
yeah,
I'm okay with how it turned out.
yeah.
Well,
No, it doesn't really it doesn't really ruin anything. I was just a bit confused when I first saw it. It was like, okay, that was a full regeneration.
yeah.
I didn't
But
think it
again,
was.
I think that's all retroactive stuff. But I mean, the way it turned out's fine. I just want to know when the Valiard's going to crop up.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's supposed to be between the 12th and final incarnation, and we're past the
Yeah,
12th now. The 12th was
I know.
technically the 11th.
I know. It's like it'll crop up between your 12th and final incarnation, and it's just like, all right. So originally that was like 12 and 13, but now with a new whole added cycle, that's like what 12 and whenever.
Yeah, it's.
So Valiard could literally be anywhere in the Doctor's timeline now.
I don't think they'll ever address the Valiard in New Who.
Yeah,
I highly
I
doubt
have a
that.
feeling they won't.
I highly doubt that they will. I think if anything, they'll just say that he's like if the show ever gets cancelled again, and it doesn't return, then they'll just say he's the last one at some point.
Yeah,
That's,
or the penultimate one, or whatever. I mean, technically, it's not even a form of the Doctor. It's somehow a byproduct from a regeneration, like a reverse Watcher or something.
yeah,
Yeah, it was completely. All we know, it's a byproduct of a regeneration, and that it's yet to come. We literally, this is why a lot of people, when it first happened, thought the Meta Crisis Doctor might be the Valeyard or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, that
Even though
makes
it doesn't,
sense.
yeah, even though it doesn't line up, people were like, "Well, look, we've got a byproduct of a regeneration kind of thing. Is this the Valeyard now?" But no, they've tucked him away in an alternate universe now, and
I mean, I thought what they were. Well, obviously, I think it would have been cool if the Valiard was like an alternate regeneration from six, where it's basically all the dark elements of six, but with none of the sort of lighter bits that he'd come on to be known for in like Big Finish and things like that. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that'd be an interesting way to take it. But like obviously I don't, as I said, it's just fun to talk about like what you would have done with it in that way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like it's all that stuff's definitely there in the Doctor, isn't it? That dark side. They love playing with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I'm especially glad that it's at least getting some screen time in the current series as well, the sort of darker elements of the character. Because
Hmm.
that's something I really appreciate in my Doctors. I like them to have a darker edge.
Yeah, I actually like in series this current series, series 12 in
Mm.
particular. I wasn't sure how Jodie Whittaker would go with Dark Doctor, but arguably I kind of like her being moody Doctor a bit more than flamboyant Doctor. Actually,
Yeah.
I think she does dark, broody Doctor quite well, like sulking pretty well actually.
Yeah, no, I vastly prefer her in, like, as you said, in that sort of sense than in the comedic sense. I personally find the comedy stuff to be a bit like grating, but that's just me personally. I know that some people love the more comedic take.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not too sold on like the whole, on the current era, like the current regeneration of like the Doctor. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it, but watching it through, like as you say, like the show's all about change anyway. So does it really matter? Because it's going to change eventually again anyway. So even if you don't particularly like one version, it doesn't matter. Just keep watching because it will change down the line anyway.
Yeah,
That's what the show's about.
yeah, no, yeah, it will change again eventually. I will say that I'm assuming. Have you watched the most recent episode?
I
The
did. I called it yesterday. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the final scene where she's saying about how she's like, this flat team's not going to work. I'm the one on the pedestal. I'm the one in charge.
Yeah.
I'm the one who makes the decisions. I really liked that, and I hope that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
get more of that because, like, as I said, that's something I like in my Doctors. I think
That's
Seven
like,
was a great example of that,
yeah. Yeah.
and I think to a lesser extent, 11 was to a degree. I think he
Yeah.
had the darker edge to him.
There was, there's always been that sort of, I was going to say an unspoken rule, but no, the Doctor does point it out several times. It's if you're traveling with him, you do what he says when he says do it, and you don't argue. If he's trying to, well, he or she's trying to tell you to do something, you just do it. And then always when the companions disobey or do something they think they can tackle by themselves, you wind up with something like a Clara situation, where she goes and thinks
Yeah.
that she can arguably perform as well as the Doctor, but she can't because she doesn't fully understand everything like he does.
Well, that's honestly where I hope these companions go, because they have sort of been getting a bit comfortable in
I've
their
seen that,
roles.
yeah, with Yaz in particular as well. She's been doing stuff
Yeah.
that's like that last episode where she just went ahead and used the teleporter into another place that she had no idea where she was going, and she goes and hits the teleport button. It's just like, why do you no? What you don't know where you're going. You could be teleporting into a place with a different atmosphere for all you know.
Yeah. Or when she's
In
like,
the in
yeah,
the one about trash and plastic and stuff.
yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah,
That was probably for me. That was probably one of the weaker ones for me personally in terms of this series. Probably one of the weaker ones. But
on it, yeah, yeah. I think this series, I think at its peak, it's been average. I
hmm,
think that's just
I
how I feel about
for
it.
me, I think it's like a massive mixed bag. Like that's how
Yeah,
I feel about it. You go from something like Spyfall, which to me
that was good.
was
I
pretty
Yeah,
solid, and like
yeah,
I even though it did take a lot of elements from things we'd already seen, like
yeah, but
it worked fine, and it did enough new stuff for me to be interested. You go from something
yes,
like that had a good story and it was well executed, and I think it really benefited from being a two-parter. I honestly think it would have been even better if it was a three-parter because the ending felt a little bit rushed. But
yeah. It did. It meandered a bit as well, which I've noticed is something with this series as well. It feels like the episodes do sort of go for a bit of a meander slightly,
Yeah,
and you get a bit
it's
clustered.
also because of the massive side cast as well. Like that, there's
Mhm.
always like five different characters that are introduced each episode, and then
Uh, so that was something that it's been mentioned before, isn't it? Like I've heard a lot of people say this, that there's too many companions introduced too quickly.
yeah, that
Like the last time we had everything new, like a new showrunner and a new tone, a new Doctor, a new TARDIS, and new companions, was when Matt Smith took over and Stephen Moffat took over.
mm,
And that we were introduced in the first episodes to the Doctor and Amy. Then we had a couple of episodes to get to know them. Then they went back for Rory, and
yeah,
then they brought Rory in. Whereas this one, it was just like, including the Doctor, it was just like, here's 4 new characters in one go, plus 5 if you count Grace, because she, for the series 11, she was in that whole first episode.
yeah. And here's a brand new villain in Tim Shaw that you've got to care about because he's going to be in the finale, and
Everything was new, yeah,
it was a lot to care about. But yeah,
yeah,
Spyfall I thought was incredibly solid, and then you go
yep.
to from that to sort of like Orphan 55 where you're just like,
The
what?
worst episode of Doctor Who ever, in my opinion. Sorry,
Do you think so?
I
I think it's
really
certainly up
disliked it.
there. I would need to rewatch things like Hellbent and Fear Her in order to sort of
Yeah, but
clarify that. But I mean,
nah,
uh,
for me, Orphan 55
it,
was the most face part. It's the only time, like, I stopped reviewing Doctor Who a while ago on my channel, just focusing on the lore stuff.
hmm,
But after watching that episode, it's the only time I had to upload and say something just like, that was that was a bad episode.
yeah,
It's
it
just,
really
yeah.
was. It was the thing as well. It was like
Like,
one of those things. It was like when the BBC America were hyping it up, saying, "Oh, you won't want to miss this ending," and it was like it was just
I know, right?
Jodie looking into the camera for 3 minutes, going,
Uh,
"Hey, global warming bad. Go fix it."
yeah, go fix it. It's like, thanks, I'm trying. I'm one person. What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah, exactly.
You're preaching to the
Says the
choir.
mega corporation that sells a bunch of plastic toys.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
It's, yeah, preaching to the choir. It's like a lot of people already get global warming bad, and your average person does try to do what they can about it. But
yeah,
again, good message, but bungled approach.
yeah. It was just the fact that it was all shoved in the ending. No, I think that was
I th-
the main issue.
I think have you ever watched I think it's Council of Geeks,
Yeah,
his
yeah,
channel? Yeah. He did a very good episode about how the even if you take out all the political correctness, which is there in the show, it's whether it bothers you or not, it is there. For me, it doesn't really bother me, but even if you were to take all that out, there is still a lot of things in some of the episodes that don't quite work, and it would still
yeah,
arguably, it's not the best Doctor Who's ever been, even without, if you take all that out, it's still not great. Like Orphan 55, for example, I just think was so cluttered and had so many plot elements put in that
yeah.
it was quite a
It's a
mess.
shame because when I saw the trailer for it, I was really expecting a classic Who sort of, monsters are
Yeah,
ganging up on a hotel sort of romp. I was expecting a base under siege essentially. That's what I was expecting.
yeah. The best siege episode I think of New Who's been the Impossible Planet. I think
Yeah,
I love that, and the Satan Pit. Those 2 episodes are really good.
yeah. I like those 2 episodes as well. But that's what I was really hoping for. I was really hoping for a base under siege story, and what we got
Yeah,
instead was basically I don't even really remember. It was just them sort of
it
driving
was a
around for
base.
a bit, and then
Yeah, it started off as a base under siege. Then they decided to all leave, despite that being a terrible idea. Then they realised it was a terrible idea, and they all ran back to the car. Then it was a car under siege that they then ran away from, and then they went into a subway, and it turned into a bit of a metro exodus kind of Russian subway station. And then they went back to the base because they realised going out of the base in the first place was a bad idea.
yeah, it was really just I don't know. It was just as you said, there was just so much going on in it,
I
and
know.
that's a problem I have with the writing in general at the moment. It's just that Chibnall likes to just well, not just Chibnall, but like the writers currently just seem to like to throw as much stuff into a plot as possible. Like
Yeah,
I
I
thought,
think that arguably, I think that's a bigger issue than any sort of or PC,
yeah,
changing
no,
Doctor Who thing. I think the
I
bigger
agree.
issue is just you're throwing too much in. You're
I'm
making
of the opinion that I will point out the political stuff when it's warranted, but I won't
yeah,
just point it out for the sake of sensationalism or
no,
views like some do. They don't even speak about any other the criticisms. Some people, they just say it's political, it's this, it's diversity, and it's like, yes, that might be an issue to you, but there are much bigger issues to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like I say, Council of Geek did a really good episode on that where he did basically said, look, even if I ignore any of the political stuff, there are issues with the show that go beyond that. It's not all about that. That's not the focus of it. That's there,
basically
but it's
how I feel as well. Like politics is an element, but there are much bigger elements to be
critical of. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but as I say, like, it's just, to me, it's an incredibly mixed bag. Like, I mean, take for example Villa Diadotti, The Haunting of you know what I mean, episode 8.
I enjoyed the last one.
I enjoyed it, but there was one bit at the end where it was like, oh, so do ghosts exist? And she's like, maybe they do.
Yeah, maybe they do. Yeah.
I was just kind of like,
yeah, but they don't.
Yeah, it was just wholly unrelated to the Cyberman story, and I was like, why does that need to be there when you could have just focused it on the Cyberman? You could have still made it creepy. You could have still had it doing creepy things. You'd have just had to obscure it from view until obviously the big reveal. But
unless it's gonna crop up later.
Yeah, I mean, potentially.
Maybe.
That's a thing as well. But I'm going to be doing an initial reaction after filming this podcast. But I'll say it here because this will go up after that reaction. I'm going to be doing a video on, well, basically my initial reaction. I'm going to say that, in my opinion, that story would have worked so much better if it was the Weeping Angels rather than the Cybermen. If it was one Weeping Angel, and instead of the Cyberman being the one to manipulate things, it was the Weeping Angel. And
that thought did cross my mind. Like when the flash of lightning and we saw someone in the background and they vanished. I was thinking, how cool would it be to use the lightning to, like, now you see them during the lightning flash.
Yeah, I was just like, and as well to me, obviously, because they used all the different Time Lord things, like a perception filter. And the indication to me, through lore and stuff, has always been that Weeping Angels were sort of dead Time Lords. That's what I always thought that they were.
Or at least if... from looking into it, there's nothing that directly says that.
But it's very heavily into that, especially...
It's an interesting theory, especially with the whole sort of the Weeping Angels of old that Rassilon says. But then it also implies that they perhaps even pre-exist the Time Lords.
Yeah, like, it's just the fact that the two women at the end of the time have their hands cuffed like with the Weeping Angels.
Yeah, to mimic the stance. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me... I always thought that they were dead Time Lords, and that would have been a great way to say that.
Plus the whole fact that they manipulate time on like a local level as well, which is...
And like I thought that the Shelley guy could have been, because he was disposed of or something by the man in the house, then maybe that was like messing up time, and the Weeping Angel could have been feeding off of his time energy, and the Doctor's got to try and protect him from the Weeping Angel. I
was thinking we were going to get another TARDIS thing, like perhaps the whole house was another TARDIS, hence like the perception filter and the seemingly endless corridors or something. Yeah, and we were going to get another hidden Time Lord in plain sight story.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see another Doctor crop up somewhere in the finale somewhere, because the finale is literally called The Timeless Children. So either
they've opened
another Doctor or the Master props back. I feel like they've got to bring him back, though. It's that, to me, it was left too open-ended at the end of Spyfall Part 2 for them not to.
What, specifically the O Doctor, or just any Master? I'm sorry, the O Master or any Master?
Specifically the O Master, because obviously he got trapped in that void thing. And
he's going to get out of it. The Master's got a long history of getting out of things that should have killed him.
Yeah, there's no way he wouldn't get out of that. And I'd love to see Sacha Dhawan's Master again, because I'm of the opinion that
he was good.
He's been one of my favourites in quite some time.
Yeah, he was back to being just, you know what, screw it, I'm a bad guy, so I'm going to act like a bad guy.
Yeah, and I prefer that. Don't get me wrong, I understand what they're trying to do with Missy, but for me, she's not the Master. It's kind of the similar thing to the War Doctor. He's not the name of the Doctor in the same way that Missy's not the name of the Master. Therefore, to me, it's almost a different character in that way. I mean, I still count the War Doctor to the rankings, but like... I still count Missy towards rankings, but like, they're just different entities to me. But yeah,
exactly, and I think that's very deliberately why they gave it gave the Missy incarnation a different name as well, so that you could, put that in its own thing.
Yeah, separate. And I would honestly wouldn't mind if the one was post Missy, because what you could say is just that due to the Master finding out about the Timeless Child, he destroys Gallifrey and goes back to his old ways. That's literally
Yeah,
all you got to say. And then
yeah, it's
boom.
unhinged him again.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't undo any of the growth that Missy went through. It just sort
No,
of obviously
no.
resets
New
it.
regeneration, new regeneration, new nature, as it
Yeah,
were.
and I totally think that seeing a big secret about the Time Lords would totally do that to the Master as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen my, I'll quickly recant it here, but basically my theory, was, speculating as to what the Timeless Child and Ruth and all this is that first I thought, well, obviously there's some hidden history that the Time Lords are ashamed of,
Yeah.
which the Master found out about and led him to raise Gallifrey. Poor Gallifrey got raised again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I thought a step further as to, well, why would they just ban Time Lords if they could literally rewrite it? So perhaps the existence that has always been, like in Doctor Who, that we've seen ever since William Hartnell, all of that is basically set in a timeline that years ago was altered by the Time Lords.
Yeah.
And like the Ruth Doctor and the Timeless Child and stuff like that are all remnants of what should have existed originally, which is now no longer does because it's all been altered. And that's the big truth that the Masters found out, is that all this time they've been living in an altered history that should never have been.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's
don't
where
get me
Ruth
wrong,
fits in as
I
well.
prefer
I
that theory to the pre-Hartnell theory, but I don't know whether saying that, hey, the show that you've been following for 50 years occurs on a timeline that was never supposed to happen, here's the real one, would be the best way to go about it in a certain way. It would almost feel like the thing that we've been following doesn't matter because it was never meant to happen in the first place. I mean, they're going to have to be...
I can completely see that, yeah.
They're going to have to be incredibly careful about how they do it. Sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, obviously, but the idea about that this whole alternate timeline, I can see why the universe existing being effectively it should never have been, why that would agitate people, fans as well. But I don't know. I'd rather that than find out that Ruth is a doctor that was just shoved in ahead of all the others.
Yeah.
Uh,
I struggle with it because obviously my ideal thing is that Ruth is post Whittaker. That's what I would like, because I really enjoyed Ruth for the brief time that we saw her.
yeah,
And
I
think
actually kind of liked her more than Whittaker as well. Actually,
yeah, I agree
for that one episode.
I honestly think that if they'd have gone with Ruth to begin with over, say, 13 that we have now, I think the reaction to a female doctor would have been severely less.
Maybe.
I think because 13 was not different, but I suppose having a more traditional doctor be the first female doctor might have helped quell people's doubts in a way. Obviously,
It's just, again, with like current 11 and 12 Who, it's so much changed in one go. Like,
Yeah.
I keep thinking, even down to the fact that the music changed, the cameras they're using are different, the fact it's shot differently as well. I think that all adds to the whole sense of like, this feels like almost a different show at points.
It does, yeah. And the music is nowhere near as good, by the way. I will say.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I was thinking like tonally, I'm trying to identify. I'm still trying to struggle as to what it is about series 11 and 12 that has left me kind of feeling almost bored by the end of it. Like I've got no desire to go back and rewatch series 11, whereas the
Yeah.
other series I can go back and rewatch them. And I think, yeah, you picked up on something there as well. But I do think the music and like the vibe and tone of the show is a lot flatter almost than it has been before.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like when, for example, the Dalek came back in Resolution, I wanted to hear the demonic choir, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't there. Like that was
No.
that was a big thing for me. Like it would always be like if Nicholas Briggs wasn't voicing the Daleks, it would feel strange, you know. For a while, it would feel strange. I'm not saying they couldn't get someone perfectly good to do it, but I just. And it was the same with the Cybermen. I was really, wanting to hear the brr, 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 brr.
Yeah, exactly.
We just didn't get it, and I was like,
I mean, again, arguably that's something that's all interjected from New Who, and that wasn't there in the classic series.
No.
But at the same time, it's now part of that series' legacy. So why not call back to it every now and then?
But when you have like certain themes that you've been like listening to ever since the show came back, like what?
Yeah.
Almost going on for like, I suppose 20 years ago, come 2025. There's certain things that you get used to and you like having there, and I think to not have those was just, I think it was a missed opportunity. I'm not saying maybe like have Murray Gold work alongside Sega Nakanola, so maybe you could give it a new sound while it still sounds familiar. Something maybe, I don't know what you would have done, to be honest, but I don't know.
To be fair, speaking of themes, though, I think the current theme tune opening is up there among my favourites, though. I really like the opening.
I will admit, I'm not a huge fan of the visuals, but the music, I think, is pretty good for the
opening. Sounds very like traditional alien, old Doctor Who kind of sounding, I think.
Yeah, I thought that when in Woman Who Fell to Earth, she falls through the TARDIS. Falls through the train. Falls out of the TARDIS. And she lifts up her head and the music starts going. That was a really cool moment, and it would have been so much better if that had faded into the title sequence, but
Yeah.
I don't know why they said that it wasn't ready for the first episode or something. It was really strange. I don't know why.
They? I didn't know that. That is odd. You'd think you'd have the title stuff done pretty early on.
I mean, that'd be one of the first things that I would do, because that's like one of the first things that people see.
Yeah.
And
it is.
Obviously, I know that they've had it in some episodes, but in some episodes I really miss the opening sting. The opening, like, the pre-credits teaser. I really liked it in Spyfall and in the most recent one, but I feel like we need to see it more often. There's something about it that I just really like, that, if it's not there, I'm kind of like, oh, I like having an establishing scene. Maybe that's just me, I suppose. I'm just picky, but like Doctor Who fans are, that's how we are, I suppose.
Oh, try dealing with the Trek fandom.
Is it worse?
Not equal. We're both very critical.
Yeah, I mean,
it's both the best and the worst thing.
I know it's gone through a lot of changes and reboots and revamps, kind of similarly to Doctor Who in that way, where it's changing constantly. So I can understand the fandom being almost as volatile in that way.
The big difference between Who and Trek when it comes to sort of overhauling how things look is that Doctor Who has a built-in reason, that being time travel. Star Trek doesn't as much.
Yeah, so I guess that would make it even more contentious.
Yeah, when things get overhauled and redesigned, and there isn't an actual reason for it in universe, people go looking for one.
Exactly.
And sometimes the answer is just quite simply, well, we wanted to change how everything looked. And it's like, yeah, but why? And it's like, well, because we wanted to change how it looked. Yeah, but why? And there just isn't a reason. They just did it because they wanted to overhaul everything. But that's a whole different.
The only problem I have with Doctor Who changing things is sometimes it backpedals. I think a great example of that is the Paradigm. They big them up huge in Victory of the Daleks to be this massive thing, and then we see them once after that, and then like never again.
The very was it I believe when they were designed, I think it was Moffat that was said he wanted them to be all bright colours like candies, like something you wanted to go lick. And she's like, yes, because when you see a Dalek, that's what I want to be thinking. I want to be thinking, ooh, that looks tasty. Let me go lick it. Yeah. No, it's a big death machine. I don't want to go near it. That's what it's supposed to be.
I don't think the idea of colourful Daleks was that bad, because we'd seen bright Daleks in Classic Who before, so it didn't bother me too much. But I will say I think they looked infinitely better as the Chrome designed in Asylum. I think if they'd have gone with that on the offset, I think the reaction would have been a lot more tame. Yeah,
I didn't mind the bronze Daleks either, to be honest. They were bronze, but I didn't mind them. They still looked strange. I say I've never been scared of the Daleks. It's just whenever the Daleks show up, you know what it means for like the
Yeah.
Doctor and
I
the
I
danger they pose.
just with the Daleks, I'm a bit sick of the bronze, the Time War design now. I'm at a certain stage where it's like I want to see something different now. I mean, obviously, I know we have the
Yeah.
Resolution Dalek, but that's only like a half measure, really.
Uh,
Um,
One Dalek design that did have me grinning was the the one where the is the 11th Doctor story when the um what was it, Victory of the Daleks, I think, the one set in Britain. No, not
yeah,
Victory of the Daleks. Yeah, but like the green military, like Earth military style
yeah.
Daleks. I
I
really
quite
like
like
them.
those. I mean, I wouldn't have
Yeah,
minded them being like the new designs for the Matt Smith era if they were sort of more combat sort of
yeah,
style
yeah.
rather than
I mean,
bronze.
with these, with like the bandolier of pouches around their like torso that they could never possibly reach, but whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
It
the
looked cool.
same with like the in Destiny of the Daleks, the explosive that they strap to themselves. They
Oh yeah, the bomber Daleks.
they're not going to be able to reach that either if anything goes wrong. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I
So
mean, there are a lot of cool Dalek designs out there as well, like the Imperial Daleks as well, like the gold and white ones that are
yeah,
following Davros. No, they're pretty cool.
I mean, I just because I see I don't know whether you've seen the leaked images of the Dalek special that was filmed a while back with the big black Dalek.
Uh,
The,
no, don't think I have.
I mean, maybe
Let me have a look.
are you opposed to spoilers in any way?
Well, I mean, I'm not. No, I don't mind.
Let me. I'll get it up here. If I can send you an image, then you'll know what I'm on about. Then, Clifton suspension. Right, here we go. Copy image address. Oh no, it's too long. Hang on.
I think I found it.
Have you
BBC
found it?
News article: Daleks spotted on Bristol's Clifton Suspension
Yes,
Bridge.
that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
So yeah, you've got the black Dalek that's kind of been inspired by the Resolution one.
Yep.
But then you've also got Time War one, so they're still sticking to the bronze, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea again. Canonically, the idea that the Daleks would perhaps beef themselves up with a new design for the sake of the Time War. But yeah, now the Time War's done, they can move away from that design.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking we need a proper like new design. You know, no
Yeah.
half measures. In
Do you know
that
about the spider Daleks that were originally going to be a thing?
for the movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So they were going to redesign them to be like arachnid spider Daleks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
wouldn't
that
want to
that
change that drastic, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think that design got incorporated into some of the Big Finish books as well.
okay, I didn't know that.
Or yeah, they turned up again. They used the idea. They're like, that's a cool idea. We'll use it as a variant sort of idea for the Daleks.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really like the new Cyberman design that was revealed. The Have you seen that? The new one with the where they bring back the EMFs and the
I
spikes.
think I have. I'm just going to bring up image of it though to refresh myself because that wasn't what we saw in the last episode, was it?
No, no, no.
Only
I
partially,
think
yeah,
the lone Cyberman was kind of a one-off.
yeah. He's a hodgepodge.
Although I will say, at points,
Yes, yeah, I have seen that.
I found him a little bit goofy at points. But I mean, that's just me. I thought the first half was really creepy and eerie, and then as soon as the Cyberman came in, it felt a
Yeah,
bit more goofy in that way as well.
soon as
The
the threat was identified, I didn't find it as gripping.
the Siberium felt like something out of a fan fiction. Like I can imagine
Yeah,
someone writing, oh, what's a cyber related thing that a MacGuffin that the Doctor needs to stop the Cyberman getting? Siberium. Yeah, there we go.
again, what's so against using old maybe some sort of like living metal validium sort of creature?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have even have minded if it was like maybe a Cybermat that had the data banks of the Cyberman on it or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just thinking, or maybe if like the cyber data banks were hidden inside that skeleton that
yeah.
was moving or something. I don't know. It's
My
just
headcanon is it's like an AI sentient version of the cyber stamps, the nodes that would turn up in that other multi-doctor that
yeah,
wasn't a multi-doctor story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I,
they're like those data devices. That's
yeah.
what my head canon is that it's sort of like an evolution of that.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I'll probably go into more depth about like how I would improve that story, because I personally think it would have again worked much better with Weeping Angels, as well as setting makes much more sense for the Weeping Angels, to me anyway. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it worked serviceably fine with the
Yeah,
Cybermen, but I was just thinking like, imagine if the guy disappearing all the time was because he's being like
who's being
erased from history, and it was all
yeah
like
yeah
Marty McFly style from Back to the Future, um, and you had obviously the Doctor trying to protect from a weeping angel, and when they closed their eyes, they were slowly getting chased. I don't know. I think that script just needed a little bit longer in the oven. I think is my point. And
yeah.
obviously, I
Again,
know all
I'd
of
say that you could apply that criticism to most of series 11 and 12, though.
yeah,
You needed
pretty
to
much. I think the only
yeah
one that I felt didn't need that was probably I'd probably say the nightmare one. That one to me felt fine, although I didn't really see the point of the other god
yeah.
by comparison.
I do like again. Chibnall's made loads of callbacks to like old Who lore, though. Like when he was talking about that nightmare god goes on about the Guardians and the Celestial Toy Makers and things like that as well, which
Yeah,
I
which is
appreciate
cool.
because there were callbacks to like the Black and White Guardians who are like in constant conflict with each other, trying to undo each other's schemes. And
Yes.
they pre-exist the Time Lords. They're like OG Time Lords from the universe before the current universe, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, I really liked that episode. I just think that the concept was really good, and it felt like it was the first story for me in the Chibnall era that didn't really rely on past tropes or things that really worked and stood on its own. Like, you could pretty much remove the references to the Celestial Toy Maker and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
that
and
would have changed it.
and it would have been as good. But whereas, like, with, say for example, I don't know, say for example with the Nikola Tesla one, it's
Yeah,
very similar to the Rachnos, and if you got rid of that, then there wouldn't really be a
yeah.
threat there.
No, like at the same time, they could have used the Rachnos, but then that would have caused a lore issue because they're meant to be extinct by this time.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, who cares
Then
about?
again,
I mean, not that
yeah,
who cares, but like, I mean, everyone just alters lore anyway, so it's
yeah, exactly. But we've had giant spider-like monsters before in Classic Who anyway. Like they're the species that eventually did in number 3, I think. Pertwee's Doctor, his last adventure against giant spiders.
yeah. I just think the tone was incredibly similar to the Rachnos, and the movements it was all too familiar in that way for me.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah, the
villain of
makeup
that
as
one,
well.
it was like, and even the actress is the actress who played Rani and Sarah Jane,
Yes, it was.
and it was
Yeah,
like it's all just a bit too familiar, and that's kind of one of my complaints. Is that it's almost as if Chibnall went from one extreme to the other with it, whereas like Series
yeah.
11 had nothing, Series 12 has literally everything.
Yeah, I think I was a bit softer on the Nikola Tesla episode because I'm just a fan of Nikola Tesla and reading up
Oh
on all
yeah,
this
don't get me wrong, I think it
he got
was
up to.
probably the
The guy
best
was a nut.
handled historical of this era so far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do like. I mean, that guy was nuts. Like he literally made a earthquake machine. It's like who does that at that time period?
Yeah, exactly.
How is he not a supervillain? It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And I honestly thought that one was well handled because, like, the monster, even though it was very familiar, tied into the historical figure. Whereas
Yeah,
I feel
it
like with a
was.
lot of the other ones, the monster just kind of felt like or you can't even call it a monster in some cases.
Yeah,
The the villain just felt like a sort of afterthought that was
yeah,
just
it
sort of
did.
tacked on at the end. It's
Yeah,
like
it did.
Rosa, I think, is probably a prime example of that, where it feels like two completely different stories. You got
Yeah, like that. I mean, that really wasn't a very engaging villain from that episode either.
No, and it was the same with Demons of the Punjab. You had the people who extract people from the point of death.
The villains that weren't even actually villains and
No,
weren't really
exactly. And
literally were pointless. They were a complete
that's
misdirection.
one
That
thing
was
I
it.
will say has been better on the whole. I would say with Series 12, the villains are actually been a threat for some of them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
not so much the dregs, but
yeah,
the
yeah,
Kasavan, they were quite powerful.
yeah. And they were what made them more menacing was the fact of the Master's inclusion into all that as well.
Yeah. So
I think
I
that had a
thought they were
huge part.
utilized quite well, although I honestly thought that they were Cyberman for most of the episode. Especially with Barton saying about how humanity 2.0
Yeah, yeah,
I was
I
like,
could see that.
but no, I thought they were handled well. I mean, the dregs looked cool, but they weren't really used all that
Yeah, that's what I've
much.
heard everyone say. Everyone said like, yeah, oh, they looked cool. They were pretty cool, but again, they were a bit inconsistent in how they operated as well. Like things like when they grabbed and seized Lord and Savior Benny and dragged him
Oh
away.
god,
What? Why?
yeah.
Why do that?
And then you
They
have
never did it with any others.
obviously the Ragnos, which was a retread of Familiar Gram, but it wasn't. At least she was a threat to the team. Like
Yeah, yeah,
she was surrounding them in that house, and like
yes,
it felt like they weren't gonna get out of it. And then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fugitive, you had the Jadoon and that Time Lord lady, and they were pretty good.
Yes.
I,
So
I
had like Gat, wasn't it? That was her name.
Gat, yeah. Even though I felt the Jadoon got a little bit sort of sidelined for most
Oh
of it,
yeah.
but I
I
mean, like,
mean, in my book, once you introduce Time Lords of Gallifreyans, everything gets sidelined. And I'm just like,
yeah,
yeah, give me more of that Gallifreyan lore.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough. But like Praxius, they sort of pulled the humans were the villain thing. And then obviously
Yeah,
episode 7 had the gods, which I thought were probably Chibnall's best villain that wasn't, you know, in the original show at some stage.
yeah, yeah, like
Uh,
a completely new thing.
a completely new thing. Like,
But
the concept wasn't new, but like
nah. Although I would say when they first turned up, I did think it was the Black Guardians and stuff coming back or something.
yeah. And then obviously with episode 8, you had the return of Cybermen. So generally, I think they'd be more threatening, and I'll give series 12 that, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Villains have been better.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, I'd
and I'll
agree with
even
that.
say I think the companions have been better. Like Yaz has had something to
Yeah,
do in some episodes.
yeah.
Bradley Walsh is
Always getting sidelined
Bradley
originally.
Walsh is also always enjoyable, but I still maintain that he's kind of served his purpose at
Yeah,
this point.
him and Ryan got their story told in series 11, sort of thing, and now they're sort of along for the ride, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I like there was that whole thing, and then with Ryan, I think Ryan is just. I just he's almost a complete non-character.
Yeah,
Part of it I think is the line delivery for me
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
I do find again alike with the music and the look of the show. I am feeling that some of the delivery as well, not on its own, it wouldn't be a problem, but on top of all of this, it does for me lower the tone of the show and make it more flat and
Yeah,
makes it duller.
there's just thing is, I think in most stories recently, there's a good story trying to get out, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
bogged down in so much. It's just not good, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and like I think
they
Ryan's
need.
a prime example of that. Like he's just not interesting, especially with
Yeah,
his line delivery. It's like, "Oh, doctor, what do we do?" It's like, do something else.
yeah.
A bit
The
of
deliveries
emotion.
are a little flat.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I feel like someone needs to before these full production mode. I feel like someone needs to take like a comb to them almost to go look. You don't need this being mentioned in here. Get rid of that element. Get rid of that thing, and instead throw in a bit more character dev here. And I think if you exchange some of the superfluous stuff for actual active development and stuff with the characters, you'd have a better show.
I agree. And then obviously you get the Doctor, who's, in my opinion, I just for most of the time I find her just irritating to me. Like it's if some people I realize will say that, oh well, Matt Smith was quirky as well. It was like, yeah, he was, but like there was a reason for him being out of touch and kind of
Yeah.
like a grandpa, because he was kind of an old man trapped inside a young man's body. Whittaker
Yep.
doesn't really have that extra bit of depth. She's just goofy because the script said she is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
I've that's kind of how I feel about her. But like I say, like I said at the start, when she goes darker, I actually enjoyed her more when she was being more sullen and sort of like that speech. I think one of the best bits that I've enjoyed so far is when she's giving the speech to the companions, being like, "No, I'm far older than you know, and you really don't know me."
yeah,
You know, that sort of thing. That speech there I felt was actually probably some of the best that I've seen from her.
yeah, I
Um,
agree. I don't know whether, and I mean, I've said this before. I don't know whether she was ever so slightly like miscast. Like that's my view on it, because for me, Ruth was a better Doctor in 20 minutes than Jodie was in two series, and obviously they were written by the same person. So I
yeah,
do wonder if maybe she was slightly miscast, but she
yeah.
is
I mean,
slowly. There's like slowly some development there, and maybe she'll grow on me over time.
so that's what I mean. It's like I've heard. I think originally when the series came out, this Chibnall said he's got a story arc that he plans to tell over like 5 series, like 5 seasons, optimistically.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm wondering if this, what we're going to see, is the Doctor gradually becoming more, darker and playing perhaps to like the strengths that of the actress sort of thing as the series goes on. So
yeah.
I'm wondering if that's going to develop and sort of thing, like in an opposite of Capaldi and Colin Baker's Doctors that started dark and got lighter. I'm thinking, are we going to start with a light, exuberant, happy Doctor that gradually gets darker as the series goes on?
I mean, that would be good, provided obviously, I think just I think if we cut down on the jokes and make it just a bit less cringy, I think that she's got it's got a chance of improving for me. But right now
Yeah,
she is sort of bottom for me in terms of my
yeah.
rankings at least.
See, I'd never do a ranked Doctors list because there is something that I can find in all of them that I enjoy, and my favourite tends to be whichever one I'm binge watching at the time.
That's
So I can't,
completely yeah, that's completely justified.
although I would say my favourite is Capaldi.
I just enjoy listing them for like it's more my own benefit really, because I like to see
Mm.
where that I put them and where and how that's changed over time. Because I used to
Yeah,
rank Capaldi really low, and
yeah,
then
yeah. Like
now he's kind of in the middle for me, because obviously he
okay,
was
yeah, yeah.
excellent performance, but it was just the writing for me that just stopped him from getting too high. But maybe that'll even change in recent years. It's maybe that'll change like next 2 years. I'll be like, wow,
Oh yeah,
Capaldi
yeah.
was the best.
Like I've got my own, I mean, obviously personally I rank them in my head, but I'd never put one out there officially because then once you put it out there, that's locked, the internet has got a hold of that and now that is a thing for forever sort of thing.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't do a ranked I wouldn't do a video on YouTube for my top Doctors because it's going to change probably within the next month.
yeah. No, I agree, but well,
There's no harm in doing it, yeah.
I guess the one thing that we forgot to do was I was going to tell
Mhm.
you how you got into Doctor Who in the first place. So we'll do that
Uh,
now.
yeah, literally grew up watching it. It was always on along that, and so my parents are like always sci-fi nuts. So there was always something like that on in the house growing up, Trek
Yeah,
or Doctor Who. So I literally grew up watching reruns of the classic series, um, and then I went and dug out my own ones. I particularly binged watched as many Peter Davidson episodes as I could find, and for ages he was my most my favorite Doctor. He was the one that I identified with.
okay.
But as I grew up, I watched it. Then, of course, the series got announced and its revival. And then I was like, oh, sweet, Doctor Who's coming back. And then been watching that ever since it's been airing. But yeah, I
Yeah,
grew up, even though I'm far younger than the classic era of Who, I grew up watching it all on repeat sort of thing.
yeah. That's cool now. So, do you know what your first episode was?
First episode I can remember is Snake Dance,
Okay, cool. Good place to
which,
start.
because it terrified me and it had yeah, I remember being a kid and seeing Snake Dance and having it actually proper freak me out.
Yeah. So, I
And
suppose
then like Yeah, go
Oh no, you go on. You
on. Then, like any, I guess, good Whovian child, I was like, that terrified me. I want to
Yeah,
see more.
yeah. That's what everyone does. They find something that scares them and carry on watching it.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess the obvious question to ask you is, what do you
Yep.
prefer, Star Trek or Doctor Who?
Uh, I don't know, man. Like Doctor Who's like comfort food,
Yeah,
and like Star Trek's like a nice big meal with a lot and supposedly more consistent lore and stuff, which I mean, arguably not. But then Doctor Who's the comfort food that I can just go back to, and although I care about it as a franchise, I don't have to. I don't feel I have to like dive as heavily into it as I do something like Star Trek,
uh huh.
because again, that built-in excuse that hey, time travel shifted everything.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So the answer is that you kind of get both things out of both.
Yeah,
So
that's why I cover them both on my channel. I mean, I end up covering Star Trek more because that's pretty much what my channel was built on.
yeah,
But I will cover Doctor Who whenever I have something to add to the conversation, basically.
yeah. No, I agree. And I remember watching your video on the 13th Doctor. I watched it fairly recently because I knew that we were going to be doing this, and I
Yeah,
wanted to get an overall feeling of your opinions outside of
yeah,
lore-related things.
yeah.
Because
What my like opinion
I do
on?
my research.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
But
But yeah, no,
yeah, and I think that I just kind of liked your reaction. It's like, oh, it's
oh
another
yeah,
Doctor.
yeah. It's
That's
good.
it. That was it. Yeah,
And if a woman at some point, because even if not for any sort of PC reasons that you want to get into or anything like that, even if you take that out of the equation, eventually the series is going to go, oh, let's try something new. What haven't we done before? Hey, we haven't done a female Doctor before.
yeah. I mean, I
It's,
knew it was
it's
gonna
inevitable.
happen at some point.
Yeah.
I
I don't get the big deal, but
At first I was not overly keen on the idea of it, but then obviously when it came on,
yeah,
I was like, eh,
yeah,
I can live with this. There are more
yeah,
important things in the world
yeah,
than
yeah.
it's
Mm,
like it's like series 11 really wasn't to my taste. It's probably my least favorite series of the show as a whole.
yeah, I'll
But with
say
that said,
again,
I don't
yeah,
blame that on the concept of the Doctor being a woman. I feel like if the Doctor is a man, I feel exactly the same about Series 11. You know, it's
yeah, it just wasn't a very strong series.
no,
I mean, Colin Baker faced the same thing with his first series.
yeah,
People
exactly,
really didn't like people in that instance. People really didn't like the direction the Doctor was going in.
yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, Colin Baker's first introduction was to attack his companion, but the idea was to soften him as the series went. But he never really got that chance to grow on screen anyway.
yeah. Which I always thought was a shame
Yeah,
because obviously there's only so much Big Finish could do in
yeah,
terms of obviously it's for me personally, I like having visual things to
yeah,
look at in a way. So that is sometimes a barrier for me when I go and try and do Big Finish. Which is why I think that it would potentially make sense for the same people who do the animations of classic episodes to
hmm
do some Big Finish. If that could happen, I don't know whether that's allowed to happen, but I think that
yeah. Get some development there. That'd be nice.
personally, the idea of like having Big Finish, but like having something visual to look at would be great, you know. And let's be fair, obviously some of Big Finish is some of the best Doctor Who to come out of recent times. So I
Yeah,
think people would be more than appreciative to have visual, stuff to go with that. I think.
yeah. Especially the stuff centered around the Time War. And it's all. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and like with animation, you can sort of exaggerate things as well, and there's certain things you can do with it that you can't do with live action. So I think there's the opportunity is definitely there if they ever wanted to do that.
Yeah, that'd
Um,
be. Yeah, I mean, I'd be all up for that. But whether or not they do it or not, it's a big investment, isn't it?
yeah, that is true. I do think that people would eat it up though. If people eat up just audio, I can imagine if like they announced that alongside maybe it'd be like one missing episode reconstruction a year plus a Big Finish reconstruction, then I think people would eat it up, especially if it was McGann, because people want more McGann
McGann,
stuff. And
the shortest and longest of the Doctors.
Exactly. And if you didn't want to actually bring him into the studio, that would be a great way of doing it without actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my opinion on it. So I wanted to sort of wrap this up, obviously, because a big focus of your channel is lore. I wanted to wrap it up by going through some Doctor Who theories and lore bits that have since been sort of cast aside, and give me for you to give me your thoughts on them, essentially. So the first,
all right, sure.
So the first and most infamous one was that I was going to say was the half human thing from the TV movie.
Okay, yeah.
Where do you fall on the argument to that? Because I've seen people on both sides. I've seen people think it's a great idea or a terrible idea. So
I think it's a pretty bad idea. I mean, they pay homage to it in Capaldi's era, didn't they? You know, the hybrid theory.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's a pretty unnecessary idea, to be honest. It would help explain the Doctor's fascination with humanity, but I always just assumed that's because they look Time Lord and it was a good place to hide from Time Lords.
Yeah.
When he was on the run originally. I think it's a pretty silly idea.
Yeah.
Explain it. Things like I used a broken chameleon arch to trick the Master and stuff like that. To turn myself into a half human and
that would open some more complications with chameleon arches as well.
I think it's a silly idea that wasn't really needed.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to continue pretending it never happened.
Yeah, it is always quite jarring when you go back to the TV movie and they say that. It's like, well, no. Yeah, so there's obviously that one.
Yep.
And then you've got things like the Cartmel Master Plan, where it's going to be revealed that the Doctor was a kind of god. Where do you fall generally on the Cartmel Master Plan? Did you like the outline of the plan?
I'm going to need a refresher on that one, actually.
So that was the one where it was going to be revealed that like Gallifrey was ruled by the Sisterhood of Khan, and then the Time Lords took over, and and
never
the Doctor
happened.
was reincarnated as the other.
Yeah, that never happened. Because I've only looked at elements from it and not put it all together before. I quite like it, honestly. Because, I mean, again, there's a lot of elements in there that I really do think work, and that the show in particular is obviously continued with, like the Sisterhood of Khan being seemingly descended from like the Pythians and stuff like that. But all the looms are obviously all then tied to that, which then all ties to the other. And that's like adding a whole new mythology and a whole new can of worms to the mythos.
Yeah.
So it's not just like you can't just pick one element from that, really, because they all end up being tied together.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Like, I do enjoy it, and I do generally consider it to be like in continuity at some point. But whether it still is, I'm not certain, because people that write the show have never really shown much direct correlation between that idea and current iterations of it.
I must admit, I thought I was the only one who liked the idea.
Yeah, I like it.
The Cartmel Master Plan.
Yeah, I like it, but it's quite a lot of heavy background lore to dump into the show, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I like it, but I don't foresee them really doing much beyond maybe a reference here or there to it.
Yeah. No.
Like I don't think we're going to see the other. I don't think Ruth really is going to be the other and things like that.
No, I doubt that that'll be the case either. But I just like the idea that at the very least, I like the idea that the Time Lords took over Gallifrey, and they were cursed with infertility, and then obviously they created the regeneration,
the looms to get around that.
Regeneration of looms and stuff. I just like that idea.
Again.
The only thing I take issue with is obviously the Doctor being a reincarnated version of a different god, because that feels very sort of fantasy in that way. Not that fantasy is a bad thing, but I
No,
just mean that it feels very tropey in that way, that he's descended from this great bloodline, and
yeah, no, I like the idea that he's established his own legacy, sort of thing.
yeah, I just
Um,
like the idea that he's a random guy who
yeah,
just kind of
madman
does
with a
what he
box.
does. Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, it's a whole. That's a whole. It's hard to pick one thing from that because it is all tied together, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
So you
massive.
can't just you can't just say the looms were real, without getting into the reason why were they real was the other and stuff. So like I say, I think we'll see elements of it maybe incorporated over time, but as a whole narrative, I like it. I just don't think we'll ever see it in the shows.
Yeah, I highly doubt that they will, but I just liked the theory. And I honestly thought that if Chibnall was going to do any major lore retconning, I thought it would be to implement something like the Cartmel Master Plan. I thought that's what he would have probably gone for.
But then we've already seen Time Lord children and stuff like that as well, so...
Yeah,
so
that
looms
is... Yeah.
don't appear to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing, because obviously we saw how many children died on Gallifrey that day.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was kind of... yeah. But no, there was one other theory that I wanted to go over with you, and I've completely... Oh, yeah. The idea of the Ruth Doctor being between 2 and 3. 6B. Season 6B.
Now, personally, I don't mind. Again, it all completely depends on how it's handled. I could... Like, that is literally the only point in the Doctor's... I was going through this the other day. The only regeneration we don't directly see is 2 to... So in theory, you could cram in another regeneration there. My only problem with that is that going to then open the floodgates to be like, if Time Lords can grant a single regeneration and then keep it secret, does that open the floodgates to like tons of other hidden regenerations of Time Lords?
Because then you could go, well, when the 11th Doctor was granted a new cycle, the old version of him split off into a different new incarnation, and the young one turned into Peter Capaldi, and then that's... I see what you mean. It does open.
Yeah, the Doctor's going to regenerate. Quick, let's use the extraction chamber to freeze time, pull him out, send him off on a mission, and then complete the regeneration. Some others, it adds a whole can of worms to like things again.
Yeah.
Although I do see it is the only point in the Doctor's timeline, aside from before and after, that is unexplained. But there's a lot of explanation that would have to go into making that sort of fit. Yeah. But it could be Ruth. I guess technically the third Doctor that's not actually documented anywhere, like a secret agent version.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer that to the idea of her being pre-Hartnell, but it's still cramming in a Doctor somewhere that didn't really need there to be a Doctor. And there's also the thing of I always thought that what do you call it? 3 falls out wearing 2's clothes.
Exactly, yeah.
So I know the theory is a neat theory, but I honestly don't think that Chibnall would go somewhere that obscure, especially considering that the previous series was so accessible to new audiences.
Yeah, and again, saying it's one of these things, it's like, it's not that it couldn't happen, it's just it would require a lot of explanation to make it fit. Like, they would literally have to have 2 regenerate into Ruth, then use Ruth in secret, then wipe Ruth's memory.
Yeah.
Make her get changed into 2's outfit, and then shove her in the TARDIS and drop her off again, back on Earth to begin the X.
Yeah, it would be very strange.
It's not that it's not that they couldn't make it fit. It's just, you're gonna really have to like hammer it in there with like a mallet and just get it to fit.
Yeah, it would kind of like be putting a square thing into a round hole.
Yeah,
it's like,
you can fit. You just gotta hit it hard enough.
But it's like it's not an easy thing.
But
as I say, I think it would make more sense. I mean, I say it make more sense. It would be easier for general public to understand if they were a secret batch of regenerations that came before everything.
that is the issue with my theory that I put out there about it being like a buried timeline that no longer exists. Is that's quite a messy concept to try to convey to a general audience, sort of thing.
Whereas just saying, oh, it was a
Hidden
bunch
Doctor.
of incarnations before the Doctor that
Yeah.
the Doctor's memory was wiped off, then people go, oh, okay, that's a bit strange.
Super,
but okay.
super easy, straightforward explanation, but at the same time, I'd look at that and go, huh. So what you're saying is William Hartnell wasn't the first.
I would hate that. I think it would be disrespectful, but I mean, that's...
I mean, it's been hinted at before that the Doctor's had previous regenerations.
Yeah, I know that's the whole Brain of Morbius thing, but to me,
Yeah,
they were the incarnations of Morbius. But that's how I've always seen it.
Yeah. It's just, I've always looked at that and gone, huh, wouldn't that be a fun theory? And never really taken it seriously.
Exactly, yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, if it starts getting taken seriously, then I'm like, okay, I guess I don't like it, but fine if that's what you want to do with it.
And I'm of the opinion that you can't just give a bunch of people the title of the Doctor that we've never seen before, because that opens
a
whole other kind of worms. I feel like you got to at least earn the title in some way, you know?
Yeah. It feels like
John Hurt did that at the end, where he's like, "I am the Doctor again," and it's like, "Yes, you are."
Yeah, and we got the whole story and everything was dedicated around it, and it was all tied to this big mythology that had seasons of establishment beforehand with the Time War and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas this is just cropped in out of nowhere, but like, oh, this is a thing. It's like, what?
Exactly.
It's got my curiosity though. Like, I need to know what happens.
Exactly. I am at least vaguely curious to see where it goes. You know, and I want to see where it goes, which is more than I can see for Series 11. Series 11 had nothing to sort of keep me.
No.
Sort of.
You have my curiosity, sir, but you do not have my attention.
Yeah. Well, like, Series 11 didn't even have my curiosity. It was just so bland to me. And so just cookie cutter.
I don't feel like I want to go back and rewatch 11.
No. Whereas, like, at least with 12, there's, you know, a story arc and there's things that are at least interesting to a certain degree. You know?
Yeah. I think overall, though, it equals out as being a fairly mediocre series.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd probably say it's, like, the biggest mixed bag in history. Cause, like,
kind of.
To me, that's
definitely
how it feels.
Yeah.
I would say it goes from being terrible to mediocre to pretty good, almost on a week-by-week basis. You don't really know what you're going to get with it.
No.
Whereas at least with, like, Russell T Davies, and to a lesser extent, but it was still there, Stephen Moffat, you kind of knew what you were going to get with each episode. With this, you just have no idea.
Yeah.
So you could see as a positive in some ways, because it leaves you constantly guessing. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but like it'll be interesting to at least see where it all goes. I get the feeling that we're not going to find out who the Timeless Child is or what the arc is until like the end of Series 13, which would annoy me.
Yeah,
because
that's what I was thinking. I'm looking at how rapidly the end's approaching. I'm like, answers, or is this just going to be we get an answer and then 10 more questions, and then it just gets, because he did say 5. He's got a plan for 5 series worth of like story.
Yeah, whether he'll do 5 series though is another thing entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
Because RTD only managed 4.
Yeah,
and Moffat did. What did he do? 5.
Yeah, he did manage 5, but he went through several Doctors as well.
5, but it felt like he'd existed for like millennia.
Yeah, because he'd been part of the show for ages.
It felt like Moffat was the showrunner for like years and years. It felt like for a while it was Stephen Moffat's show. Even though he was only there 1 year longer than Moffat, only 1 year longer than Russell T Davies. He was just there for his boots were so stamped on the show.
Whenever it got quieter and more subdued and more intellectual, it was a Moffat thing. And when it got really loud and bombastic and dramatic, it was like a Russell T Davies.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it was just... Yeah, I think that 5 years, I don't see him staying that long. I mean, especially with... Obviously, I don't want to get too much into the argument of ratings and things like that. But you do
Yeah.
have to sort of keep an eye on them, and you look at like the recent ones, and you're like, that's not so great.
No, not comparatively to how it's been.
You know,
They're not awful, but they're
I
not.
know you
They're not
have
for who
digital
they're not.
media competing now, but so
Yeah.
did Peter Capaldi, you know, and he was pulling in better numbers than this, so it was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's difficult to really say, but I just think that if this many people have stopped by now, then who's going to be really left to care when they inevitably reveal the Timeless Child arc at the end of Series 13?
I
Feel like
mean, me, so that I'll still be
yeah.
there and I can point at the screen and
Oh
go,
yeah,
"Ha,
I
knew
will
it,"
still
or I
be.
can just
I'll
go,
still be there, but it's
"Yeah,
like I just mean general public wise,
yeah."
which is who it's like primarily. As much as like fans enjoy it, it's trying to be catered to general audiences as well because it's funded by the general public. So
Yep.
it's got to try and cater to them as well. And I'm just thinking who in general audiences that aren't really into the lore are going to care when they reveal that the Timeless Child is Benny. You know, it's it's do you know what I mean? It's just we'll all care. We'll
Oh my
be really
god,
annoyed.
that's why they took him on Orphan 55. They knew who he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like we'll all care. We'll all make angry tweets about it and angry videos about it, but general public,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's all they're gonna be gonna
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I do. All right,
It's like,
fine.
whatever. I don't even know who Benny is. Some guy from the last series. I didn't even watch that. It was like
Yeah, you gotta be careful when tying it to the old lore.
yeah, that's the thing.
Like,
I do worry about that a lot. But
yeah.
we shall see. I just like to make sure that the show's doing well, and it hurts a little bit when you see ratings dip. I think that's why people get frustrated by the ratings. It's just I hope that at least like I don't know. That's one thing you gotta say about Series 11. At least it had the sort of the general audience appeal. Like you could sort of watch it without any prior knowledge and be fine.
Yeah, yeah, it was a completely fresh start.
Whereas with like say a random person watched Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Yeah, who's
They,
Captain Jack? Yeah.
yeah, who are all these people that I'd never seen before?
Yeah. Then again, the asking investment, if you really want to get into who, the investment is you could start from the 2005 era and sort of jump on board there if you wanted.
Yeah.
Which isn't as much to go as to say, there you go, here's 700 and, what is it, like 30 episodes now? Or something like that, 700 plus episodes. Go work your way through all of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I do think that for general audiences, it might be a bit of a stumbling block for some to go from, having basically no lore at all to having all of these hints to previous lore and...
Yeah, I mean, it's great for, like, lore channels.
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong,
Just saying.
I love watching your videos on it and, like, other channels like yours,
I do also understand that you shouldn't have to go do homework to understand the plot of a show.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a sort of happy medium point where both your channels are happy and like people who make theories are happy, but then at the same time, general audiences can watch it and not be too confused. I think Russell T Davies is the only person to truly get that balance, right? I'd argue.
Yeah, I mean, the safe thing to do is just make references that don't affect the plot.
Yeah.
Like they did in the episode you were talking about, like your favourite one, the Nightmare one. They made references, but ultimately nothing critical to the plot, but they made a couple of references that actually were kind of relevant, but not.
And that still made sense outside of the context of everything else. Whereas, again, Villa Diodati is another one. If you haven't watched episode 5, you give you like, who's Jack? What's the Timeless Child? It's all these different questions that would pop up. And, yeah. So I do think there needs to be a sort of happy middle, and I think RTD is probably the king of that because I think Moffat did go too far into the
overarching stories
that you really had to, like, even I, who was into the show at the time, had to really try and follow Series 6,
Yeah.
It was a difficult series to follow, even for like seasoned fans. So
Yeah.
And like that was an issue for most of the Moffat era. And you go into Chibnall and you get like the complete reverse of that with Series 11, and then you get the complete reverse again with Series 12, and it's like, well, make up your mind. Are you a new thing or are you not? You know?
Yeah. That's like originally when back in Series 11, Episode 1, the woman that fell to Earth, I thought the series was going to be full of like a more classical idea of Who, but retold in a modern way. You know, with the Doctor being more hands-on and building her own sonic screwdriver. It's like, we're going back to pre-point-and-click, solve problems kind of Who and stuff like that. And we're getting more cerebral Doctor that solves problems and thinks them through sort of stuff.
Well, you definitely
but
didn't get
then as the show... Exactly. Then the next episode and the subsequent series sort of undid everything that I thought was, the show was heading in that direction.
Yeah,
so
I mean, like...
partly why.
It's almost that I think Harry's Moving Castle said it when he was like, "Oh, it's basically the Sonic Screwdriver show at this stage," which it kind of is in some ways.
The Sonic Screwdriver and its courier, yeah.
Because it's like when the 13th Doctor is on screen, chances are the Sonic is on screen as well,
whipping it out every opportunity,
and doing a super exaggerated motion to go with it.
Yep.
As well, it just looks super. Because it doesn't even look like she's operating a piece of technical equipment. It looks like she's like posing for a trailer.
Yeah.
It looks like she's
going, screenshot.
Take the picture for the promo. But yeah. So that about wraps this up. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Unless you wanted to mention anything else.
No, I got a spitball about random lore for about, what was it, like over an hour now?
Yeah, it's been about almost an hour and a half. So pretty good time.
Yeah.
As always, I'll link your channel in the description below.
Thank you. I will probably point this out to my subs as well if they want to hear my
if
unedited
you could, I'm always
ideas.
Very appreciated. I always love getting a bit of attention. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
That's all right.
Also, I'll do generic calls to action, ladies and gentlemen. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like. Comment down below what you think about anything that we discussed. We've discussed a lot, so whatever your thoughts on anything of it was, then write something about it. I'll probably read it. Yeah, thank you for watching, everybody, and I will see you. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that unreleased podcast, or well, I guess unreleased video, because I've sort of transformed it into a video where Tharies was a lot more optimistic about Series 12 and the future of Doctor Who as a whole. As past me said, be sure to like and whatever and subscribe. But, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, I suppose. Obviously, I just wanted to give you guys something to watch in this kind of period of uncertainty. And it's quite long as well, so, you won't be too bored when you're all suffering with Copacabana, as I'm now calling it to avoid demonetization. So, yeah. But now is the premiere and big reveal of something I've been working on for a little while now. It won't be out for a while yet, but I wanted to tease it at the end of this video so that I could let you guys know, and the teaser will play at the end of every video going forward. So if you missed it today, then you've got obviously other episodes, other videos that it'll be in. But I'm really excited to show this to you, so without further ado, here is the teaser for Doctor Who Shattered, a brand new audio series. Miracle of the Time Lords? Ha! Nothing miraculous about it. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's more of a disease.
The destroyer of worlds reduced to this, a man whose only purpose in life is to wish for his death.
Extraterrestrial!